really want to start this conversation by thanking you. I want to thank you. And I want to let you know that I started Children of Promise NYC 10 years ago, and it's an organization. We're based in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and we just opened our second location in the South Bronx, serving two very completely different communities, but they all are children of incarcerated parents.
Yes.
And I start off this conversation by thanking you, because I work with the young people. I work with the teen population, the population and the age group that most dear to my heart. And when I'm facilitating workshops and bringing the young people together, and we're bringing focus groups, I'm able to reference you and Black Lives Matter and just someone who is successful, but successful in the eyes of our young people, which might be a little bit different. You know, they may see success in, want to be a lawyer or an attorney, an engineer. And I try to explain to our young people success and the appreciation of your experience. There's value in your experience. And your experience allows me to have a point of reference that our young people are able to relate to. So I just want to kind of start off this conversation, as I said, with thanking you and just allowing you to kind of elaborate a little bit on your experience and how our young people are able to relate to an experience that might not be traditional, but it definitely speaks to success, and it allows our young people to have a voice.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And, I always think about if I had an organization that were working with young people who were the children of incarcerated parents, what I would have needed, and to know that you are doing the work that you're doing on the other side of the country for young people who have similar stories as mine is just so powerful and so also exciting. We're living in such a bleak time, and to have organizations like yours that are a shining light for so many young people, and I would also say their parents, is so, so important. And, with my background and my history, I didn't realize until I was an adult that I was a child of incarcerated parents. And that, watching my father go in and out of jail and prison and having to visit those facilities, the impact that had on me and my spirit and just how I related to the world. I started Black Lives Matter really because of what I witnessed inside of my family and inside of my community. And that was over-incarceration. That was the use of prisons and jails to deal with social ills like drug dependency and poverty and homelessness. And so knowing that there's an org that's helping young people understand why they are experiencing what they're experiencing and not blaming them for it. I often felt like it was my fault, and that it was, my parents' fault for the conditions we were in, versus actually, this is the fault of a neglectful system. And the system needs to do something different to ensure everyone is safe and is able to have healthy living conditions. No child should have a parent spending their entire adult life in prison for drug use. In my father's situation, it was drug use and drug selling, and those shouldn't be reasons why someone should be locked away for a significant amount of time.
We created our organization to have a safe space so our young people could come together and share experiences. They understand what it means to drive 6 hours to visit mom or dad behind a plexiglass. Yes. Or you get a hug when you walk into the visitation room and you can't sit on mom's lap, or you can't really hug mom the entire visit and have that connection. Our young people share these experiences. And when I read yours, I felt I was speaking to one of the young people that attends our program on a daily basis. And it really opened my eyes as well while I understand their experiences, because in addition to an after-school program and summer day camp, so it's for many of our young people, it's a fun, safe space. But we're also a licensed mental health clinic. We're in Article 31.
Amazing.
That's an adolescent outpatient mental health clinic that allows our young people to express what they're feeling, to be able to co-locate. So that way, because as you know, mental health services is not part of the healing process for Black and brown people.
Absolutely
So
not.
for us to include and to be able to co-locate a mental health clinic, it really allows our young people to deal with the issues, the stigma, the challenges, the trauma of having a parent in prison.
That's right.
In a space where they can understand each other's experiences. So I definitely want to again commend you in really allowing your experience to be one that not only is relatable by so many of the young people that we serve, but then also enlightening those that are trying to, I think, to humanize the experience of young people who are dealing or have been impacted by mass incarceration.
That's right.
So I definitely wanted, and we are looking forward to the young reader, the young adult version. And this is phenomenal. Can I just ask, what really made you even think, you know what, while we definitely have the memoir, what made you think, you know what, for the young people, let's actually have an edition that will be best suited for them? What made you think to even embark on that endeavor?
Well, I was a young activist. I was a 16-year-old who was reading bell hooks and Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou, and I needed those books. I needed those books as part of my own personal development as a young person and a young activist. So I wanted to offer that to young people as well. I wanted them to have space to really be able to talk about and think about what they are experiencing. You know, at the young adult edition has reader questions at the end.
Right.
And those reader questions really do support young people in helping them understand, you know, what they just read, how it relates to their lives. Maybe it doesn't relate to their lives. I just thought it was an important contribution. And who would have known that we'd be in this moment,
right,
and that the Y edition would be able to come out during this time. It's perfect timing. And I'm just grateful to be able to keep offering young people the space to feel everything they feel, and also the space to figure out how they could be advocates in their own lives.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely one of our primary goals, and the goal of our teen program. We have a portion of our organization is the 14 to 18-year-olds, and Youth Action, which they named, and they developed and branded their logo for the teen program. But it really allows them to find their voice, because as I explained, their voice has value. Your value in whatever your experience may be, positive or negative, it has value. And you can use that voice to not only make changes for yourself, your family, your community, even for those that you may not know.
That's
so
right.
So I want to kind of ask you about, what are your views on justice-involved young people? You know, the goal of our organization is to ensure that we break that cycle, that our young people are not involved in the criminal justice system. And while these systems are in place to get them caught up, and we understand what that means, how do we keep our young people away from these systems? And what are your ideas and your views on those, on that perspective?
I mean, number one, providing a space. I think about all the times in my childhood where if I just had space, a space that was mine and not occupied by the police, a space that was healing and that wanted to listen to me. I think about how much my brothers and the other boys in the community just didn't have the space.
Right.
We didn't have the public space. We didn't have the people to, you know, be a container for us. And so I think that's one way, is like just creating space for young people. The other thing is we need to have less policing. It should not be a crime to be a young person of color.
Over-policing our communities, over-policing. Sorry.
No, that's right. I had a police officer circle our block every hour on the hour. If that is the kind of resources you give to a community, of course, someone's going to end up getting arrested. Lots of people are going to get arrested. That's the conditions you're setting up.
Right.
There's no cops circling, you know, white neighborhoods every hour on the hour, and trust and believe that those teenagers are doing the same thing our teenagers are doing, because that's what teenagers do. Teenage life is about exploring, making mistakes. And we have made it a crime to be a young teenager. And I think, you know, and to be a developing adolescent. We have criminalized adolescence for people of color, mostly Black and brown youth. We have not done that for white youth. In fact, white youth can get away with rape and murder and still be seen as human beings. And so I think less policing in our communities. And the last thing is, you know, we are, especially in the Black and brown community, we are communities that really believe in the collective. And so collectively, giving our love and care to young people is so critical. I am like you, I love teenagers. It's my favorite age group. I feel like they're the age group that nobody wants to touch. They're like, no, they don't, you know, once they become teenagers, people are like, I can't deal with it. I love the attitudes. I love the what seems as apathy, but really truly isn't. If you just scratch a little bit, you start to realize the world of beauty and curiosity. But that's because teenagers need to be engaged. If you meet them where they're at and engage them, trust and believe. I've worked with hundreds of teenagers and they love to be engaged and they love to be seen and recognized. And so that to me is really important.
Yeah, I think for teenagers as well, just to talk about that for a minute, because it's an age group that I appreciate because they know when you're real. If you're coming there, I tell them, you know,
they smell corny.
If you're there for a job, they will know. They will know absolutely, and they're not going to engage with you. So I do find this age group, I think there's a sense of urgency with teens. You know, they are walking a tightrope. They could be at the wrong place, wrong time, get shot, get arrested, lose their lives. There's a sense of urgency with teens that I think keeps, you know, that I feel keeps a momentum that I really enjoy after, you know, having an experience. I worked in corporate America before I started this organization 10 years ago. So there's a certain momentum that I had on Wall Street that I feel at Children of Promise NYC, that the teens keep you on your toes and they keep things moving. And I love it. I love it, you know, and definitely it takes time, but they will appreciate the love. When it's real, they will appreciate it. So I asked you another question, because one thing I thought that was so important that you referenced was the lack of mental health services in our community, and how prisons are now becoming alternatives for individuals who need mental health services.
That's
They're
right.
in prison, and correctional officers are not prepared to deal with prisoners. They're either macing them, they either get beaten, food is taken away from them as consequence for mental health needs that are in prison. So I appreciate it, and we recognize at Children of Promise NYC that we had to provide mental health services in a culturally acceptable way, and that is through an after-school program, summer day camp. So I'm going to go play ball, but I'm going to see my clinician. I'm going to go to the computer lab, but I'm also going to see the psychiatrist and get whatever meds or whatever necessary therapy that I'm going to need, or what sessions, or just opportunities to be able to be heard from a individual who's doesn't have, you know, any interest in what decisions you make. They're really just listening to what the challenges are that you might be having. Pain, the anxiety, the loss, the depression for so many of our young people, the anger. You know, your mom got to come to the parent-teacher night last night. My mom couldn't come. I'm really pissed off about that, and I'm 8 years old. Are you going to suspend me? Are you going to exclude me from school, throw me out of school because I'm fighting, because I'm angry? I'm going to recognize the pain that I'm going through as a young person. And that's why I really appreciated you really speaking about your brother and the mental health needs as a family, and how you were able to deal with that. If you can speak about that a little bit.
Well, also, yes, and I'll add to that, because my nephew, who I ended up raising alongside, raising him with my mother, both his father, which is my brother, and his mother were in prison at the very same time. He lost both of his parents at the very same time, and he was 11, just going into junior high. Huh? And I remember that first week of junior high, it was awful. He had been diagnosed with ADHD. He was at a school who just couldn't support him. He was getting written up for not having his shirt tucked in. He was being told, you know, you should take yourself to the nurse's office to take your ADHD meds. How do you tell 11-year-old with ADHD to remember to take their meds? And And it was this unforgiving response to him. Mm-hmm. And we made a decision as a family to homeschool him because we saw that the system was about to swallow him up. And they did not have space for a young Black boy who was trying to manage his emotions, losing both of his parents to the prison system and experiencing such a grief and loss at that age with no support is very, very, it's more than hard. Like you said, it's traumatic. And we made that choice and we put him in therapy and really gave him a lot of tools. And, you know, he is 22, I believe. I don't know. I think he's 22. Right. He's in his early 20s and he's in college and he's an artist and a welder. And I promise you, having given him so much loving kindness and care, and he was not easy. He was not an easy teenager. He was not an easy teenager. But giving him a lot of love and care and kindness resulted in, you know, I talked to him and his emotional intelligence is so powerful. He could tell me when he's feeling impacted. He cries easily. He is such a self-responsive human being. You know, he knows when he needs to get his own mental health in check. I can only imagine if we didn't provide that kind of conditioning and support and soil and fortitude, what would have happened? He would have ended up in the same conditions as his parents. Doesn't mean he hasn't been caught up in the criminal legal system. He's a Black man living in America, but we have been able to create a container for him. And that has everything to do with this ethos and philosophy that I believe you and I believe in, which is taking care of young people and the ones that are hurting the most, making sure that we do not demonize them, making sure that we are holding space for them. And I'm just impressed with him. I'm impressed with him because any other child who went through what he went through, you know, growing up in foster care, losing his parents to incarceration, just would be differently impacted. And he doesn't mean he doesn't grieve, doesn't mean he's not hurt or bitter or resentful, but he is able to talk about it. He's able to process it. And he's so focused and clear on his goals. And that comes from, you know, believing in him and me believing in him and my family believing in him.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so assuring. That is the success story at Children of Promise NYC, providing our young people with the tools, providing them with alternatives to deal with their anger, as I said, the loss, the anxiety, the depression, giving them alternatives to deal with that, providing a safe space to just be able to come in to our after school program and like, Miss Content, you know, I'm having a really bad day. I need to see my clinician. And that to me is so reassuring for our young people to know the purpose and being able to come into our building, come into the organization and know they'll be, I don't want to say just covered, but really to be met with, dealt, and showered with love. The word is showered. Really, it's showered with love. Right. And love not only from their clinician, but from their counselor, right, from staff on all levels. And not only do we work with our young people, it's also about the caregivers. It's about that grandmother that's now raising her grandchild. It's about that mom that's now raising her child, you know, because the father is incarcerated, that single mom, you know, that foster mom. So definitely I appreciate hearing about your nephew because that really is the light at the end of the tunnel for the 300 young people that we serve every year. So thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely. Yeah. So now if we can talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter, right? I definitely, you know, I think it's, so much of it is related, or I think at least it's so much more than just policing Black Lives Matter. I think it really creates a safe space for us to strategize, for us to collaborate, and really for individuals to tell their story. That's what I appreciated most. But I really want to hear from you. What's the narrative as we approach dealing with the pandemic and dealing with the movement as it relates to at this time? What is the narrative as you see it as time has progressed?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's important for people to understand that Black Lives Matter is a movement that has really been shaped by a long history of Black people fighting for freedom in this country. And that has looked through like fighting for freedom through protest. It's looked like fighting for freedom through voting. It looks like fighting for freedom through getting more Black elected officials, fighting for freedom by changing policy. We are really interested in creating a full approach to how we get our needs met. We believe that Black people shouldn't just be surviving, that we should also be thriving. And all of the misinformation and disinformation out there that we are trying to destroy the country, that we are terrorists, that we hate white people, is just a ploy to undermine our movement. We know that the civil rights movement was a movement that was demonized by white supremacists and the right. We know that MLK, when he was murdered, was unliked by most of the country. So we don't let ourselves be deterred by the misinformation and disinformation, but any opportunity I have to clear it up with people who are listening, I do, because no child should experience what I've experienced, with what your clients and young people who you work with have experienced. We deserve to live in housing that is adequate. We deserve to have adequate public education. We deserve to have access to healthy food. We deserve to have access to mental health care and physical health care. And part of making people understand that we deserve that is through our constitutional right to protest. It's been really disturbing to see the right use protest as a way to discourage people from supporting us. How does that make sense when the minute that COVID happened and we were in quarantine, most white people were challenging the government for having to wear masks and having to quarantine, and they did it through use of intimidating people with guns. And that has not been the case with BLM. We have been outside with our chants and our bullhorns. And I think it's really important that people recognize that.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I definitely, and we utilize the Black Lives Matter movement, again, at our organization to really as a point of reference for our young people, not only for our teens, for our young people are separated by age. So some of our older middle school students, our 10s and 11s and our 12s and 13 age group, we utilize the Black Lives Matter. Not only did we utilize and have them protest and allow them for the first time, for many of our young people, for the first time in their lives, really being able to participate in a protest, even really visualizing, what does this mean? What does it mean for us to really utilize our voice to be heard in issues that affect us, that are important to us? So I appreciate the movement. I'm so happy that I was able to have our young people to take part and for them to be able to utilize this historic time in life and know that they contributed. I tell them, they think, of course, I say, you're going to be telling your grandkids about this. And they're like, okay, Miss Content, like grandkids, like, what are you talking about, But like, I tell them, this is historic time and you guys are part of history. So I appreciate the Black Lives Matter movement in allowing Children of Promise NYC to utilize that as a tool for our young people to really find their voice and to really understand and appreciate their experience of what they're going through and experiencing in their communities. So I thank you again for allowing us to do that. But what is our call to action so that we can unite our community? And how do we move forward to not only impact ourselves, our direct community, but really Black and Brown communities at large? What is our call to action that we can unite from across the United States together to really make not only an impact, but really make a difference in the lives of Black and Brown families?
There's not just one call to action. So I want to make that really clear, but I will say this. Number one, learn about why voting and the electoral politics at large are so important for the fight for Black life. It is really, I think, necessary for young people in particular to understand that voting isn't just what you do on election day,
right,
but it's what you do afterwards. It's what you do leading up to election day. I also think it's important for people to understand that you should not do this work alone. Join something. Think about what you're most passionate about, what you're most excited about, and join an organization that's already doing it. I'm pretty sure it is happening right now, right under your nose. Join that organization. That may be, donating to it. It may be volunteering for it. But make sure that you join a team of people, community of people that are advancing forward what you so deeply believe in and what you long for here in this country and around the world. And lastly, my call to action is for us to love each other, to have a deep and profound commitment to loving each other. And that looks like recognizing that if you live in a country where only a small group of people are protected and the rest of the people are neglected and abused, then everybody is not protected. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be love, a deep love and commitment to that love that is going to get us out of the mess that we're currently in.
I think this really has allowed individuals to kind of wake up to a certain extent in what am I doing with my time? And really also recognizing between social media, the news media, really recognizing what's really happening in Black and Brown communities for individuals who might not have an interest 6 months ago, really just becoming aware, oh, so they get stopped by the police. Oh, I thought they had to do something wrong. I think during COVID, what are your sentiments on really bringing some awareness and waking up various individuals in America?
Wow. I think, I've loved how people have said there's a twin pandemic, racial injustice and COVID-19, and that we're living and breathing inside of both pandemics and how they impact each other and how they impact the people who are living through them. I deeply believe that 2020 has been a year of reckoning of all the years. I thought it was 2013 with the killing of Trayvon and George Zimmerman. And I think that was a fraction, I think that fractured, sort of cracked us open. And then I think obviously-
Flat crack.
Exactly, like a little crack.
Right.
And I think obviously the murder of Mike Brown, crack. Mm-hmm. And then Sandra Bland, crack. And then all of a sudden-
Right.
We have been split open.
Absolutely.
And we can no longer
ignore it.
What we're living inside of.
Absolutely.
And that has so much to do with COVID-19 and watching this country respond terribly and watching human beings have to figure out what to do with themselves, not having a social safety net, and the impact that's had on folks who are just trying to survive. And not to mention witnessing a whole human being die in front of us on someone's video, on someone's phone camera, mm-hmm. and seeing that person's life force be taken from them for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Those moments really do capture the kind of terror Black people are living under in this country. And I think that was a final straw. And the powerful work that's been happening in Louisville, Kentucky around Breonna Taylor has lifted up this conversation about Black women and girls in a way we've never seen.
And even as that, even mainstream media is even picking up on Black girls and women, and in a way that I haven't seen in the past. And I think, but how do we now maximize these conversations? Because they will dissipate. They'll just die off. And it'll be like a topic of the past. And I want to know, how do you think we can engage our young people to keep the momentum? We as adults, we can kind of figure out and we can, find ways that we can engage. But what do you think of some of the ideas that we can talk to the 300 young people in Bed-Stuy and Children of Promise NYC and the 300 young people in the South Bronx and young people across America? How do we keep them engaged?
I think as mentors and adults in their lives, we actually have to keep the conversation going as well. It needs to be a reciprocal relationship. But I think young people, even when the cameras aren't there, even when there are no longer interests from traditional media for us to be the headline, you still need to keep going. You still need to be in the streets. You still need to be pushing your city councils, your commissioners, your chiefs of police, your sheriffs. You need to still be challenging and pushing what's happening at your local level. We shouldn't just be fighting when it's popular. We should also be fighting when it's not. Sometimes it counts even more when there aren't a bunch of news cameras around, when everybody has taken their eyes off of families who've been impacted by state violence, when the verdicts have come down that cops were in their legal right to kill. Those are the times when the families are their loneliest, where the community is our loneliest. So we got to keep the conversations going.
So Patrisse, thank you so much for this conversation. You've enlightened me in so many ways that I can now take back to the young people that we serve, our families, our community. I appreciate you. I appreciate your experience and how you've shared your experience, the transparency of your experience, and thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. This was beautiful. This was a beautiful conversation. All the young people are going to watch this. You are doing amazing. You're brilliant. You're powerful. And you got this. You really do.
Thank you so much. Excellent.